He didn't just want her to fail. He wanted to erase her. Chase Hendricks, the voice of America, just dragged an 11-year-old onto a stage in front of 2 million people. He whispered, "Fail quietly, kid." But what she did next didn't just break his signature note. It burned his entire billion-dollar empire to the ground. Stay tuned, because the truth sounds a lot different than the lie. The Orpheum Theater in Los Angeles wasn't built for mercy. It was built for icons. And tonight, Chase Hendricks was the god of that stage. He stood there in a $3,000 suit, the light catching his Grammys, looking down at a girl in a cheap $15 discount store white blouse with the tags still tucked inside. "You there?" Chase's voice sliced through the theater like a razor. "The black girl in the back, the one with the cheap uniform, come up here, now." Her name was Maya Vance. She was small for 11, her hands shaking so hard she had to tuck them into her pockets. 500 elite guests in silk and diamonds turned their heads. 2 million people watching the livestream leaned closer to their screens. "I'm sorry, sir," Maya whispered, her breath hitching. "I didn't mean to." He didn't let her finish. He grabbed her shoulder, his fingers digging in with a grip that said, "I own you," and dragged her into the center of the white-hot spotlight. "Let's see if you can actually sing," Chase sneered, turning to his band. "Or if you're just taking up space in my charity." He leaned in, turning his microphone off so only she could hear him. His breath smelled like expensive coffee and cold malice. "Fail quietly, kid. Don't make a scene when you choke." He signaled the band. The song was Higher Ground. His song, the one with the C6 whistle note that had made him a legend, the impossible note. But 4 hours ago, Maya had stood in this same theater with her stomach tied in knots. She lived in Compton with her mother and 2 brothers in a cramped apartment where the heater only worked in one room. Money was a ghost in their house, always talked about, never seen. Her mother was a nurse at County General, working night shifts and sleeping in stolen 3-hour blocks while Maya made mac and cheese for her brothers. Maya had been singing since she was 5, standing in the second row of the New Hope Baptist Church choir. Her director, Ms. Johnson, knew the truth early on. Maya had perfect pitch. She was 1 in 10,000. She could hear frequencies the rest of the world ignored. But professional training costs a fortune they didn't have. So Maya sang at her public elementary school where the music budget was a memory. She taught herself complex runs by watching YouTube on her mother's cracked, old phone. She had a range that shouldn't exist in a child, from a deep chest voice to a G6 whistle register that sounded like crystalline wind chimes. She didn't know it was rare. She just knew it felt like home. When the letter arrived saying her school was chosen for Chase Hendricks's gala, the hallways erupted. Chase was the hero of the underprivileged. He was the voice of a generation with 4 platinum albums and 2 Grammys. His brand was built on a single, legendary note, the C6 at the end of Higher Ground. Except, during soundcheck that afternoon, Maya had wandered near the wings, curious to see her idol. She heard him attempt the bridge of his famous song. He started strong, polished, expensive, and smooth. But as the melody climbed toward that signature note, his voice didn't soar. It broke. He was 2 full steps below where he needed to be. Maya watched as he snapped at his sound engineer, "Bring the track up higher. I need more support." When he sang it again, it was perfect, too perfect. Through her gift of perfect pitch, Maya heard the digital shimmer. The note wasn't coming from his throat, it was coming from the massive theater speakers. The great Chase Hendricks was a fraud. She had gone back to the choir and said nothing. Who would believe a girl from Compton over a man who sold 4 million albums? But now, standing under the spotlight with his hand gripping her arm, Maya realized this wasn't an opportunity. He knew she'd heard him at soundcheck. This was an ambush. He was going to humiliate her so that if she ever told the truth, the world would just see a bitter, failing child trying to tear down a legend. The opening chords of Higher Ground began to swell. Maya's mouth went bone dry. "I don't think I can," she whispered. "Sure you can, sweetheart," Chase said, his voice loud for the audience. "Just follow the music." He stepped back, his eyes gleaming with the anticipation of her failure. "Whenever you're ready," he challenged. Maya took a deep, shaky breath. She looked out at the cameras, at the millions watching, and at the man who thought he could buy the truth and bury it. "Mr. Hendricks," her voice was small, but it carried. Chase's plastic smile tightened. "Yes." "Can you turn off the backing track, please?" The theater went into a vacuum of silence. Chase blinked, his mask flickering for a split second. "What? The backing track?" "Can you turn it off?" Maya asked, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I want to sing it for real." A murmur rippled through the 500 guests. Chase's smile froze into a grimace of iron. "The backing track is part of the arrangement, sweetheart." "But you sang it without the track at soundcheck," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "You sang it alone." The murmur grew into a low roar of conversation. Chase's jaw tightened until the muscles popped. "Soundcheck is different from performance." "Then can you sing it first? Show me how to do it without the track," Maya asked. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. The cameras zoomed in. Chase stared at her, his eyes full of a dark, cold promise of revenge. "You want me to audition for you?" He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "No, sir," Maya replied firmly. "I just want to see if you can actually hit the note." The theater erupted. Gasps, laughter, shouts from the back. Chase's face went from pale to a deep, bruised red. "Of course I can hit the note," he spat through his teeth. "I've been hitting it for 15 years. "Then show me," Maya challenged. Chase looked at his sound engineer, then back at the crowd. He was trapped. If he refused, he looked like a coward. If he tried. "Fine," he snarled. "Kill the backing track, all of it." The engineer hesitated, his hand hovering over the board. "Do it," Chase screamed. The button was pressed. The lush, full sound of the recording vanished, leaving the theater feeling empty and exposed. Chase raised his gold-plated microphone. He began to sing. At first, it was fine. He moved through the first verse with the practiced ease of a man who had done this 1,000 times. The audience began to relax. Maybe the kid was just looking for attention. Maybe the voice of America was real after all. Then came the bridge. The melody began to climb. E4, G4, B4. Chase's voice followed, but Maya could see his neck tensing. His shoulders rose. He was fighting the air in his lungs. D5, E5, A5. Then he reached for the legendary C6. His voice didn't soar. It splintered like glass hitting a concrete floor. He cracked, a sharp, painful sound a full step and a half below the target. He stopped instantly, coughing and forcing a fake laugh. "Sorry, folks," dry throat. He smiled at the cameras, but the sweat was pouring down his face now. "That's why we use the track, to protect the voice during these long tours." The theater was cold. 500 people had just heard the truth. "You didn't hit it," Maya said quietly into her microphone. Chase turned on her, his eyes wild. "I told you my voice is tired." "But on your album, you hit it 27 times, Maya countered, her voice ringing out. "I counted, and in every live video online you hit it perfectly, every single time." The audience shifted. Phones came out. The livestream chat was moving so fast it was a blur of text. "What are you trying to say, kid?" Chase stepped toward her, his veneer finally shattering. "I have perfect pitch," Maya said, standing her ground. "I can hear the frequencies. The note on your album is exactly 1046.5 hertz. That's a C6. But what you just sang, that was 932 hertz, a sharp 5. A whisper rippled through the front row. Is she right? And the voice on the album, Maya continued, the words tumbling out now, unstoppable. It doesn't sound like you, it's a woman's voice. I checked the credits. Sophia Mitchell, additional vocals. The theater exploded into chaos. Chase lunged at her, grabbing her arm. You need to stop talking right now. Why? Maya asked, looking him dead in the eye. Because I'm telling the truth. Because you're 11 and you don't know what you're talking about, he roared. I know what I heard at sound check, Maya said, her voice vibrating with a power she didn't know she possessed. She looked directly into the nearest camera lens. That note isn't yours. You've been lip-syncing for 15 years. Chase pulled her toward the wings, his grip bruising. We're done here. But before he could drag her off, a voice boomed from the sound booth. Actually, she's right. The house lights came up. A man stepped into the light, the sound engineer who had worked for Chase for 5 years. I've played that backing track at every single show, Chase, the engineer said, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and relief. You've never hit that note live, not once. Total, absolute silence. Chase stood frozen, his world collapsing in real time in front of millions. You're fired, Chase whispered. I know, the engineer replied, but she's 11 years old, and she's braver than I've been in half a decade. The crowd began to turn. A voice from the dark shouted, Then prove her wrong, sing the note. Chase's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. I just did. No, you didn't, you cracked. Chase looked at Maya, and something ugly and venomous twisted in his chest. Fine, he spat. You think you're so smart. You sing it, right now, no warm-up, no second chances. Let's see what a perfect voice actually sounds like. Maya's hands trembled. This was it. This was the moment she either proved the truth or became the liar Chase wanted her to be. She looked toward the choir section. Her teacher, Ms. Johnson, nodded with tears in her eyes. Sing like you do at church, baby. Maya closed her eyes. She felt the air fill her lungs, felt her diaphragm expand, and felt every lesson from that small Baptist church settle into her bones. She opened her eyes and nodded to the band. The intro to Higher Ground started for the second time that night, but this time the world was watching for a miracle. The air in the Orpheum didn't just feel cold, it felt like a vacuum. Every phone in that building was aimed at a little girl from Compton, and every person watching at home was holding their breath, waiting for the crash. Chase Hendricks was smiling, but it wasn't a hero's smile. It was the smile of a man who had just pushed a child off a cliff and was waiting to hear the bones snap. The band began the intro again. This time, the drums felt heavier, like a march toward a battlefield. Maya stood in the center of that white-hot circle, the gold-plated microphone looking massive in her small, trembling hand. Chase Hendricks stepped back into the shadows of the stage, folding his arms. He was leaning against a speaker stack, his eyes fixed on Maya with a predatory hunger. He was waiting for the first crack in her voice. He was waiting for her to go flat, to miss the rhythm, to prove to the world that she was just a loud-mouthed kid who didn't know her place. Maya closed her eyes. The opulent theater, the diamonds in the front row, the smell of expensive perfume, it all faded away. She wasn't in the Orpheum anymore. She was back in the New Hope Baptist Church on a Tuesday afternoon, the sun streaming through the stained glass, hitting the dusty floorboards. She could smell the floor wax and hear the faint hum of the city outside. She remembered Ms. Johnson sitting at the piano, hitting a single key and saying, "Don't just sing the note, Maya. Live inside it. A song is a house and you own the keys." Maya opened her mouth. The first line of Higher Ground came out as a whisper, a soft, velvet-smooth note that hummed with a resonance that shouldn't have been possible for an 11-year-old. It wasn't the polished, over-processed sound of a pop star. It was raw. It was human. It was real. A ripple went through the crowd. In the front row, a famous music producer sat upright, his eyes narrowing. He'd spent 40 years looking for the voice. He knew within 3 seconds that he was looking at it. Maya began to move. The nervousness that had turned her blood to ice was melting, replaced by a fire that started in her chest and poured into her throat. She stepped toward the edge of the stage, away from Chase, claiming the space as her own. As she hit the first chorus, the power doubled. Her voice didn't just fill the room, it shook the crystal chandeliers. This wasn't a cover of Chase's song. She was reclaiming it. She was singing about the struggle of her mother's double shifts, the cold nights in Compton, the weight of a world that tells girls like her to stay silent. Chase's smile didn't just fade, it vanished. His face went through a terrifying transformation, shifting from arrogance to genuine, cold-blooded panic. He looked at his manager in the wings, signaling wildly for them to do something, to cut the power, to start a fire alarm, anything. But the crew didn't move. They were mesmerized. The sound engineer, the one Chase had just fired, was leaning over his board with tears streaming down his face, pushing Maya's faders to the top. He wanted the world to hear this. Then came the bridge, the climb. The audience leaned forward. This was where Chase had broken. This was the graveyard of his career. Maya didn't hesitate. She didn't strain. She didn't even look like she was trying. She hit the E5, then the A5, her voice gaining more clarity, more shine with every step upward. And then the C6. She didn't just hit the note, she held it. It was a sound so pure, so piercingly beautiful, that it felt like it was cutting through the very fabric of the room. It wasn't the thin, digital whistle of the backing track. It was a rich, soaring crystalline bell that vibrated in the chests of every person in the theater. She held the note for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 12. The Orpheum Theater erupted. People didn't just clap, they stood up and screamed. It was a sound of collective realization. They were witnessing the birth of a legend and the death of a lie at the exact same moment. Maya finished the song with a soft, descending run that landed perfectly on the home key. She lowered the microphone, her chest heaving, sweat dripping down her face. Silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence that follows a lightning strike. Chase Hendricks walked slowly back into the light. He tried to reclaim the moment. He reached out to put a hand on Maya's head, a patronizing gesture for the cameras. "Well, well," he said, his voice shaky and thin. "A lucky break for a talented young." Maya didn't let him touch her. She stepped back, the microphone still live. "I'm not lucky," Maya said, her voice echoing through the hall. "I'm practiced, and I'm honest. Can you say the same, Mr. Hendricks?" The voice of America froze. The cameras were inches from his face now, capturing every twitch of his eye, every bead of sweat. "You're a rude, ungrateful little," Chase began, his temper finally snapping. He forgot about the live stream. He forgot about the 500 elite guests. He saw only the girl who had destroyed his 15-year illusion. He lunged toward her, his hand raised as if to snatch the microphone away, or worse. Suddenly, a massive figure stepped between them. It was the security guard who had been standing by the stage door all night, a man who had seen Chase treat staff like trash for years. He didn't say a word. He just stood there like a mountain, his arms crossed, staring Chase down. The crowd began to boo. A low, rolling sound that grew into a deafening roar of rejection. "Fraud," someone shouted from the balcony. "Liar," yelled another. Chase looked out at the sea of faces that used to adore him. He saw only disgust. He looked at the monitors and saw the viewer count on the live stream plummeting as people shared clips of his failure and Maya's triumph. "Get her out of here," Chase hissed at his manager. "Get this whole choir out of my building." "It's not your building anymore, Chase." A voice came from the side of the stage. A woman stepped out. She was dressed in a sharp black suit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Evelyn Reed, the CEO of the record label that held Chase's contract. The woman who had authorized the $50 million marketing budget for his upcoming world tour. She didn't even look at Chase. She walked straight to Maya and knelt down so they were eye to eye. "What's your name, honey?" Evelyn asked, her voice soft but carrying across the hushed room. "Maya Vance," she replied. "Maya," Evelyn said, a small smile playing on her lips. "I think you just saved my company a lot of money, and I think the world needs to hear a lot more from you." Evelyn stood up and turned to Chase. Her face turned to stone. "Chase, go to your dressing room. Don't speak to the press. Don't touch your phone. My lawyers will be at your house at 8:00 a.m. tomorrow." "You can't do this," Chase screamed, his voice cracking again, this time with desperation. "I made you hundreds of millions. One note doesn't change that." "It's not about the note, Chase," Evelyn said coldly. "It's about the fact that you tried to bury an 11-year-old girl to hide your own mediocrity. We're done. The tour is canceled. The contract is voided under the morality clause." Chase Hendricks, the man who had entered the building as a king, walked off the stage in total silence, his head bowed, shadowed by two security guards who weren't there to protect him, but to escort him out. But as Maya stood there, feeling the warmth of the spotlight, she didn't realize that the battle was only beginning. Chase Hendricks had millions of dollars, a team of shark lawyers, and a lot of powerful friends who didn't want the industry secrets of lip-syncing and ghost singing to be exposed. As Maya walked off stage to the embrace of her crying mother, a man in a gray suit watched from the back of the theater. He picked up his phone. "We have a problem," the man whispered. "The Vance girl, she didn't just sing, she talked. If she talks to the press about Sophia Mitchell, the whole house of cards falls down. Deal with it, now." Maya thought she had won. She thought the truth was enough. But in the music industry, the truth is just something they pay people to bury. And Chase Hendricks was about to show her just how deep he could dig. "They say the truth will set you free. But in the high-stakes world of the American music industry, the truth usually comes with a price tag." Maya Vance went to bed a hero, but she woke up a target. While the world was replaying the clip of her hitting that C6, Chase Hendricks's legal team was already in a war room in a glass skyscraper, sharpening their knives. They didn't need to be better than her. They just needed to be more expensive. The morning after the Orpheum Gala didn't feel like a victory in the Vance household. It felt like a siege. By 6:00 a.m., 3 black SUVs were parked outside their modest apartment in Compton. Men in sharp gray suits stood on the sidewalk, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, looking like vultures waiting for a signal. Inside, Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring into a bowl of cereal she couldn't eat. Her mother, Alina, was still in her blue nurse's scrubs, having rushed home from her shift at County General the moment she saw the news. On the table between them lay a thick, leather-bound folder that had been hand-delivered 10 minutes prior. "They call it a non-disclosure and settlement agreement," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "They're offering us $500,000, Maya." Maya looked at the number written on the document. $500,000. It was more money than her mother would earn in a decade of double shifts. It was a new house. It was college for her brothers. It was safety. "But what do we have to do for it?" Maya asked. Alina turned to the third page. You have to sign a statement saying the Orpheum incident was a planned publicity stunt. You have to say Chase Hendricks coached you to challenge him to create viral buzz. And you can never mention the name Sophia Mitchell or the word lip sync again, ever. If you do, they sue us for $10 million. Maya felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. They want me to tell the world I lied. They want to buy your voice, baby, Alina said, tears welling in her eyes. They want to turn your truth into a script they wrote. Before Maya could respond, there was a heavy knock at the door. It wasn't the polite knock of a neighbor. It was the rhythmic, demanding pound of someone who owned the building. Alina opened the door to find a man who looked like he was carved out of ice. This was Marcus Vane, Chase Hendricks's lead attorney, the man the industry called the Eraser. "Mrs. Vance," Vane said, stepping into the small kitchen without being invited. He looked around the room, his eyes lingering on the peeling wallpaper and the humming, ancient refrigerator. "I assume you've read the terms. It's a very generous offer for a family in your circumstances." "My daughter told the truth," Alina said, her voice gaining a sudden, sharp edge. "You can't buy that." Vane smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "The truth is a luxury, Mrs. Vance. Reality is much more expensive. Currently, there are 3 different lawsuits being drafted in my office. One for defamation of character, one for tortious interference with a billion-dollar contract, and one against your daughter's school for breach of the performance agreement." He leaned over the table, his shadow falling over Maya. "If you don't sign that paper by noon, we will file those suits. We will tie you up in court for the next 20 years. We will take this apartment. We will take your nursing license. And Maya, she will never be allowed to sing into a microphone again, not even in church. We will make her name synonymous with liar in every corner of the internet." Maya looked up at the man. He smelled of expensive cologne and power. She felt small, smaller than she had on the stage. "Why are you so afraid of me?" Maya asked quietly. Vane paused, his icy gaze flickering. "I'm not afraid of you, kid. I'm afraid of the precedent. If every little girl with a voice thinks she can take down a titan, the whole industry collapses. We can't have that." He placed a heavy, gold fountain pen on top of the contract. 12 o'clock. If that pen hasn't touched the paper by then, the SUVs outside stay. But they won't be here to offer you money. They'll be here to serve you papers that will end your life as you know it. Vane walked out, the door clicking shut with a sound like a jail cell locking. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Alina reached out and took Maya's hand. Her mother's palm was calloused from years of hard work, but it was the steadiest thing in the world. "We have to do it, don't we, Mama?" Maya whispered. "If we don't, they'll hurt you. They'll take everything." Alina looked at her daughter, really looked at her. She saw the talent, the fire, and the terrifying honesty in Maya's eyes. She thought about the night shifts, the exhaustion, and the fear of never having enough. Then she thought about the sound Maya made on that stage, the sound of a soul that couldn't be caged. "Maya," Alina said, her voice low and fierce, "I've spent my whole life being told to be quiet, to work hard, and to accept what the world gives me. I did that so you wouldn't have to. If you sign that paper, you're not just saving us. You're killing the girl who sang that note, and I won't let you do that." "But the lawsuits—" "Let them sue," Alina said, a wild, brave light appearing in her eyes. "We don't have anything they can take that matters more than your soul. If they want a fight, we'll give them one. But we aren't doing it alone." Alina picked up her phone and dialed a number she had been given the night before. "Hello, Ms. Reed. This is Alina Vance. My daughter is being threatened by Chase Hendricks's lawyers. You said last night that the world needs to hear more from her. Did you mean it?" On the other end of the line, Evelyn Reed, the CEO of the label, was standing in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She looked at the data on her screen. Maya's performance was the one trending video in 42 countries. "I meant it," Evelyn said. "Send me the documents they gave you, and tell Maya to keep her throat warm. We're going live again in 2 hours." "Live where?" "Not on a stage," Evelyn said, her voice turning cold and professional. "On a live stream from your living room. We're going to show the world exactly what a silence contract looks like. If Chase wants to play dirty, we're going to drag his secrets into the mud." But as they hung up, Maya noticed something out the window. One of the men in the gray suits wasn't looking at the house. He was looking at his phone, and he looked angry. He walked over to the other SUVs and signaled. They weren't waiting for the contract anymore. They were moving. Suddenly, the power in the apartment went out. The Wi-Fi died. The cellular signal on Alina's phone dropped to 0. "They cut the lines," Maya whispered, her heart racing. Outside, the SUVs began to circle the block, their engines humming like predatory beasts. Marcus Vane wasn't waiting for noon. He was moving to isolate them, to cut them off from the world before they could speak again. "Mama," Maya said, looking at the dead phone. "What do we do now?" Alina grabbed her car keys and a heavy coat. "We run. We get to the studio. If we can get inside Evelyn's building, they can't touch us." They ran for the back door, but as they stepped into the alleyway, a car screeched to a halt, blocking their path. The door opened, and a man stepped out, but it wasn't one of Vane's lawyers. It was a woman. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red, wearing a hoodie pulled low over her face. "Get in," the woman said. "Who are you?" Alina demanded, shielding Maya. The woman pulled back her hood. Maya gasped. It was a face she recognized from the liner notes of the album. "My name is Sophia Mitchell," the woman said, her voice trembling. "I'm the voice Chase stole 15 years ago, and if you want to take him down, you're going to need the person who knows where all the bodies are buried." The ghost had finally come out of the shadows. Sophia Mitchell had been paid millions to stay silent, but watching Maya Vance hit that note had broken something inside her. The war for the truth was no longer just Maya's fight. It was a revolution, but Chase Hendricks wasn't done. He was about to play his final, most dangerous card. The shadow of the Orpheum was long, but the shadow of the industry was longer. Sophia Mitchell, the woman whose voice had been sold in pieces for 15 years, was now sitting in a beat-up sedan in a Compton alleyway. She was the ghost that Chase Hendricks thought he'd exorcised with $1 million check. But ghosts don't stay buried when they hear a living voice screaming for the truth. The hunt was on, and in the City of Angels, the devils were driving black SUVs. "Get in, now!" Sophia's voice wasn't a singer's melody. It was a jagged rasp of pure desperation. Alina didn't hesitate. She threw Maya into the backseat and dived in after her just as the first black SUV rounded the corner of the alley, its tires screaming against the asphalt. Sophia slammed the car into gear, the old engine roaring in a way that suggested it had been modified for exactly this kind of moment. They fishtailed out of the alley, missing the SUV's bumper by an inch. Maya looked out the back window. The men in the gray suits weren't just lawyers anymore, they were hunters. "Who are you really?" Alina gasped, bracing herself as Sophia took a sharp turn onto Central Avenue. "I'm the reason Chase Hendricks has a career," Sophia spat, her eyes locked on the rearview mirror. "Every high note, every impossible run you've heard on his albums for the last decade, that was me. They used a vocoder to lower my pitch, blended it with his mid-range, and sold it as a miracle. I was young, broke, and my mother needed surgery. I signed my life away for a check that Chase spends on a single watch." Maya stared at the back of Sophia's head. "The C6, you sang it." "I sang it in a booth in Burbank in 2012, Sophia said, her voice cracking. And I've watched him win Grammys for it while I work as a backup singer in dive bars under a fake name. But when I saw you on that stage tonight, when I saw you look him in the eye and hit that note live, I realized I wasn't just hiding. I was helping him kill the next generation of real talent. Suddenly, a heavy thud rocked the car. The black SUV had caught up, ramming their rear bumper. "They aren't going to let us get to the studio," Maya yelled. "We aren't going to the studio," Sophia said, a grim smile appearing on her face. "Evelyn Reed's office is bugged. Vane has ears in the walls there. We're going to the only place they can't get into without a warrant and a SWAT team." She veered across 3 lanes of traffic, cutting off a semi-truck, and dived into the sprawling, chaotic heart of the Lowe's Angels port. Behind them, the SUVs were joined by a second vehicle. They were being boxed in. The chase through the shipping containers was a blur of rusted iron and salt air. Sophia drove like a woman with nothing left to lose, weaving through the narrow lanes of the shipyard until she slammed the brakes in front of a nondescript, reinforced steel door labeled Warehouse 42. "Outmove." They scrambled inside just as the SUVs screeched to a halt 50 yards away. Inside Warehouse 42 wasn't crates of cargo. It was a high-tech, soundproofed recording fortress. "This is owned by a friend," Sophia whispered, locking the 3-inch steel bolts. "He hates Chase even more than I do." The lights flickered on, revealing a wall of servers and professional-grade microphones. But as Maya leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath, she realized her mother was looking at her phone. "Maya, look," Elena whispered. The news was already shifting. The power of Chase's PR machine was terrifying. The top headline on the major news sites wasn't about Maya's voice. It was, "Chase HENDRICKS ATTACKED, 11-year-old fan and disgruntled ex-employee accused of extortion plot." They had already leaked a doctored audio clip. It sounded like Maya's voice, but distorted, saying, "Give me $1 million or I'll tell everyone you're a fake." "They're framing us," Maya said, the weight of it finally crashing down. "They're making me the villain." "That's his move," Sophia said, walking over to the main console. "He destroys the messenger so the message doesn't matter, but we have something he doesn't expect." She pulled a dusty, encrypted hard drive from her bag. In 2018, Chase got high in the studio. He started bragging about how he'd never sang a day in his life since the accident. He admitted everything. The engineer recorded it, and Chase tried to have him blacklisted. "The engineer gave this to me before he disappeared from the industry." "The accident?" Maya asked. Sophia looked at her, her expression softening. "Chase wasn't always a fraud. He had a voice once. But 15 years ago, he was in a car wreck. It crushed his larynx. He had surgery, but he lost his upper register. Instead of telling the fans, he decided to build a lie. He's been a ghost in his own life ever since." "We have to play it," Elena said. "We have to put it online." "If we just post it, Vane will have it taken down for copyright infringement in seconds," Sophia warned. "We need a platform they can't kill. We need a live broadcast that's too big to ignore." Just then, a heavy thud echoed against the steel door. Then another. The men outside were using a literal battering ram. "They're coming in," Maya whispered. "Maya, listen to me," Sophia said, grabbing her shoulders. "I can upload the data, but it takes time to bypass the firewalls. I need 10 minutes, maybe 15. You're the only one who can keep the world's attention long enough for the upload to hit the global servers." "How?" Sophia pointed to a camera mounted on the wall, connected to a global streaming satellite. "Sing, not the song they know. Sing the truth. Tell them about the contract. Tell them about the SUVs. If you keep 10 million people watching, they won't dare break that door down while the world is looking." Maya looked at the door. It was starting to buckle. She could hear Marcus Vane's voice on a megaphone outside, cold and commanding. "Break it down. Secure the drive. Use whatever force is necessary." Maya felt the old fear rising, the one that whispered she was just a girl from Compton with a cheap blouse. But then she looked at Sophia, a woman who had been silenced for 15 years, and her mother, who had sacrificed everything for her. Maya stepped up to the microphone. She didn't wait for a beat. She didn't wait for a track. She tapped the go live button. Within seconds, the viewer count began to climb. 100,000, 500,000, 1 million. "My name is Maya Vance," she said, her voice steady and clear as a bell. "And right now, men sent by Chase Hendricks are trying to break down this door to stop me from telling you the truth. They offered me $500,000 to lie to you. This is what the music industry sounds like when the lights go out." She held up the silence contract to the camera. Outside, the battering ram stopped. The men in the SUVs looked at their phones. They saw themselves on the screen. They saw the world watching them. "You want to hear the note?" Maya asked, looking directly into the lens. "I'll give you the note, but I'm also going to give you the man behind the curtain." As she began to sing a haunting, a cappella melody, Sophia's fingers flew across the keyboard. The progress bar for the upload crawled forward. 62%, 68%, 74%. But then the warehouse went pitch black. The cooling fans on the servers spun down. "They cut the main power grid to the harbor," Sophia screamed in the dark. The silence was absolute. And then, the sound of the steel door finally giving way, the screech of metal on metal, filled the room. The screen went black, the music stopped, and in the darkness of Warehouse 42, Maya Vance realized that sometimes the truth doesn't just need a voice. It needs a miracle. Chase Hendricks had pulled the plug, but he forgot one thing: you don't need electricity to sing. Blackout. In the music industry, a blackout is usually a technical glitch, but in Warehouse 42, it was a weapon. The high-speed upload was frozen at 74%. The digital truth was trapped in a box with no power, and the monsters were already through the door. Chase Hendricks didn't just want the drive. He wanted to make sure Maya Vance never had the breath to sing again. But he forgot that a girl raised in the shadows of Compton doesn't need the lights on to find her way home. The darkness was absolute, thick enough to swallow the sound of Maya's frantic breathing. For a few seconds, the only noise was the sharp clack-clack-clack of Sophia Mitchell's keyboard as she desperately tried to see if the server's internal battery would hold. "It's dead," Sophia hissed in a whisper. "The backup didn't kick in. They didn't just cut the power, they fried the junction box." Suddenly, the warehouse was pierced by 3 jagged beams of light. High-powered tactical flashlights cut through the gloom, dancing over the recording equipment like the eyes of predatory insects. "We know you're in here, Maya." Marcus Vane's voice echoed against the metal walls, stripped of its legal polish. Now it was just cold, hard command. "The police aren't coming. The harbor security is on our payroll. Give us the drive and your mother goes home tonight. Keep playing hero and nobody leaves this shipyard." Elena Vance pulled Maya behind a row of heavy equipment racks. Her hand was steady, but her skin was ice cold. "We have to move," Elena breathed into Maya's ear. "If they box us in here, it's over." "The back exit is blocked by shipping containers," Sophia whispered, crawling toward them. "But there's a ventilation shaft above the vocal booth. It leads to the roof. From there, we can jump to the pier." "Jump," Elena looked at the height. "Maya's just a child." "She's a survivor," Sophia countered. "And right now, she's the only witness Chase can't buy." The flashlights were getting closer. They could hear the heavy boots of Vane's security team crunching on the stray cables on the floor. Crunch, crunch, crunch. "On my signal," Sophia whispered. She grabbed a heavy metal mic stand and hurled it toward the far corner of the warehouse. Clang. The sound erupted like a gunshot in the silence. The flashlight beams immediately whipped toward the noise. "There," a voice shouted. "Go," Sophia urged. They scrambled toward the vocal booth. Maya felt the rough industrial carpet under her knees, the smell of dust and old electronics filling her nose. They reached the booth, and Sophia boosted Maya up toward the narrow metal grate of the vent. Maya's fingers scrambled for a grip. The metal was cold and sharp. She pulled herself up, her muscles screaming, and then reached back down to help her mother. "I've got you, Mama," Maya whispered, her voice cracking with the strain. They were halfway into the shaft when a flashlight beam hit the glass of the vocal booth. "The booth, they're in the vent." "Freeze," a man shouted, the light blinding Maya. Sophia didn't climb. She turned back toward the door of the booth and locked it from the inside. She looked up at Maya, a sad, beautiful smile on her face. "Keep going," Sophia said. "Get to the pier. There are tourists there, millions of them. They can't hurt you if the world is watching in person." "Sophia, no." Maya reached out. "They want the drive, Maya. I have the drive. I'll lead them away," Sophia lied, holding up a decoy USB stick she'd grabbed from the desk. "Go, now." The men began hammering on the reinforced glass of the booth. Sophia turned to face them, standing tall, humming a low, perfect note that vibrated through the metal of the vent where Maya hid. It was a signal, a goodbye. Maya and Alina scrambled through the cramped, hot belly of the ventilation system. The sound of breaking glass echoed below them, followed by a muffled struggle. Maya wanted to scream to go back, but her mother's hand was a tether, pulling her forward. They emerged onto the roof of Warehouse 42. The salt air hit them like a physical blow. Below them, the Lowe's Angels Harbor was a graveyard of rusted iron, but a mile away, the lights of the Santa Monica Pier glowed like a neon promised land. "We have to get to the crowd," Alina said, looking at the drop. They slid down a service ladder, just as an SUV roared around the corner of the building. There they are. The chase was no longer a game of shadows. It was a sprint. Maya's sneakers pounded the concrete of the pier. Behind them, the SUV was forced to stop by a row of concrete pylons, and 4 men jumped out, sprinting after them on foot. Maya's lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. Her legs were heavy as lead. But every time she felt like falling, she remembered the look on Chase Hendricks's face when she hit that note. She remembered that he wasn't a god, he was a coward behind a curtain. They hit the wooden planks of the public pier. It was 11:00 p.m. on a Friday. The pier was packed with teenagers, tourists, and street performers. "Help!" Alina screamed, but the sound of the Ferris wheel and the arcade games drowned her out. The men in gray suits were closing in. They didn't look like lawyers anymore. They looked like shadows coming to life. They were pushing through the crowds, moving with a terrifying, silent efficiency. Maya looked around. She saw a street performer, a young guy with a beat-up guitar and a massive PA system. He was singing a folk song to a crowd of 10 people. Maya didn't ask. She ran to the stage, grabbed the second microphone, and cranked the volume dial to the maximum. The feedback squealed, a piercing, high-pitched scream that made everyone on the pier stop and cover their ears. "Listen to me." Maya's voice boomed over the entire pier, amplified by the 2,000-watt speakers. The men in suits stopped 10 feet away. They couldn't move now. Not with 1,000 tourists turning around, pulling out their phones, wondering what the hell was happening. "My name is Maya Vance," she shouted, her voice shaking but projected with the force of a hurricane. The girl from the Orpheum, Chase Hendricks is trying to kidnap me. These men are his. The crowd gasped. The name Maya Vance was already the most searched term on the planet. Marcus Vane stepped forward, trying to play it off. He put on a fake, concerned smile. Maya, honey, you're confused. You're having a breakdown. We're here to take you to your mother. My mother is right here. Maya pointed to Alina. The tourists began to circle. A group of local bikers stepped in front of the men in suits, sensing the vibration of a lie. Back off, pal, one of them said to Vane. The kid looks terrified. This is a private matter, Vane hissed. Nothing is private anymore, Maya screamed. She turned to the street performer. Give me a C6, right now. The guy, stunned, hit the key on his portable synth. Maya took a breath that seemed to pull the very air out of the ocean. She didn't just sing the note. She sang a melody of defiance, a wordless cry that echoed off the water and silenced the entire pier. But as she reached the peak of the song, she saw a black limo pull up at the edge of the pier. The door opened. Chase Hendricks stepped out. He wasn't hiding anymore. He walked through the crowd, his face a mask of cold fury. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the fans. He had lost his career, his reputation, and his soul in the last 6 hours. Give me the drive, Maya, Chase said, his voice a low, dangerous growl that the microphones barely picked up. You think these people will save you? I own the air they breathe. I own the platforms they're using to film this. I will delete you from history before the sun comes up. He stepped onto the small wooden stage, looming over her. One last chance, Chase whispered. Give me the drive, or I tell the world your mother stole the money from the hospital. I have the forged receipts ready to go. She goes to prison for 20 years. You go to a state home, all for a note nobody will remember in a week. Maya looked at her mother. She saw the fear in Alina's eyes, the fear of a woman who knew how easily the powerful could crush the poor. Maya looked at the drive in her pocket. Then, she did something nobody expected. She held the drive over the edge of the pier, dangling it over the dark, churning water of the Pacific. You want it, Chase? Maya asked. Come and get it. The ultimate choice, the truth on a plastic disc or her mother's freedom. Chase Hendricks thought he knew Maya's price, but he was about to find out that when you have nothing left to lose, you become the most dangerous person in the room. The Santa Monica Pier has seen it all, the lovers, the dreamers, the desperate, but it had never seen a billionaire icon begging an 11-year-old girl for a piece of plastic. Chase Hendricks stood on that wooden stage, his shadow stretching out like a dark stain over the crowd. He thought he was playing a game of chess. He thought Maya's mother was his queen to take, but Maya wasn't playing chess. She was playing for keeps. The wind whipped off the Pacific, smelling of salt and the impending storm. Maya held the hard drive over the edge, her arm outstretched. Below her, 20 feet down, the black water churned around the barnacle-crusted pilings. One slip, one choice, and the only evidence of a 15-year conspiracy would be lost to the silt and the sharks. You think you're being brave, Maya? Chase's voice was low, vibrating with a desperate kind of magnetism. He took a step closer, his expensive Italian shoes clicking on the damp wood. You're just being a child. You drop that drive and you don't just destroy me. You destroy your mother's future. You destroy any chance of a career you ever had. Who's going to sign a girl who throws a $50 million asset into the ocean? It's not an asset, Chase, Maya said, her voice amplified by the street performers' speakers, echoing out to the thousands of people now surrounding the stage. It's a confession. It's a lie, Chase shouted, turning to the crowd, trying to reclaim his charm. She's been coached. This is a hit piece by my rivals. Look at her. She's terrified. She's being used. But the crowd wasn't cheering anymore. They were filming. 10,000 lenses were focused on Chase's face, catching the way his eyes darted, the way his cool exterior was cracking like sun-dried leather. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the noise of the arcade and the wind. A deep, mechanical thrumming. A massive searchlight swept across the pier, blinding the audience for a second. A sleek, black industrial boat, the kind used by elite harbor security, was roaring toward the pier, cutting through the swells with violent speed. "The cavalry is here, Maya," Marcus Vane whispered from the side of the stage, a predatory grin returning to his face. "Give us the drive, and we can still make this go away." The boat slammed into the dock, and 4 men in tactical gear jumped out. But they didn't look at Maya. They looked at Chase. And they weren't alone. Stepping off the boat was a man in a navy blue suit, Detective Elias Thorne of the LAPD's Financial Crimes Division. And standing beside him, looking pale but resolute, was the sound engineer Chase had fired at the Orpheum. "Chase Hendricks?" Detective Thorne's voice was projected through a megaphone. "We have a warrant for your personal servers and all financial records related to the Higher Ground royalty distributions." Chase froze. On what grounds? "Fraud, grand larceny, and thanks to a very brave woman who just walked into our precinct an hour ago. Witness tampering." From behind the detective, a woman stepped into the light. It was Sophia Mitchell. She wasn't hiding under a hoodie anymore. She was wearing a crisp white shirt, her head held high. "I didn't stay in the warehouse, Chase," Sophia shouted over the wind. "I knew your men would find the back door. I lead them on a chase to the precinct. I gave them my original contract, the one with the blood on it." The crowd erupted. The narrative was shifting in real time. On the live stream, the comment section was a wildfire of "cancel Chase" and "voice of Maya." Chase looked at the police, then at the crowd, and finally at Maya. He was a trapped animal. He looked at the hard drive in her hand. "It won't hold up in court," Chase screamed, losing his mind. "It's hearsay, digital manipulation. I am the brand. I am the music." He lunged for Maya. It happened in slow motion. Chase's hand reached for the drive, his face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated greed. Alina Vance screamed and tried to pull her daughter back, but Chase was faster. Maya didn't flinch. As his fingers brushed the plastic casing, she simply opened her hand. The drive didn't fall into the water. It fell into the hands of Detective Thorne, who had stepped onto the stage just in time. "I'll take that, Miss Vance," the detective said, his eyes never leaving Chase. Chase stopped, his hand still outstretched, grasping at the empty air. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm clouds above. "Chase Hendricks," Thorne said, pulling out a pair of steel handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it. Because for the first time in 15 years, the world isn't interested in your voice." As the metal clicked shut around Chase's wrists, the crowd didn't roar. They watched in a strange, respectful silence as the giant was led away. The Voice of America was being escorted off a wooden pier in handcuffs, his $3,000 suit wrinkled and stained with salt spray. Marcus Vane tried to slip into the crowd, but Alina Vance stepped in his way. "You forgot one thing, Mr. Vane," Alina said, her voice cold and steady. "You can buy a lawyer, you can buy a studio, but you can't buy the way people feel when they hear the truth." Vane looked at her, his icy facade finally crumbling. He saw the thousands of people, normal people, working people, who were looking at him with nothing but contempt. He realized then that no amount of money could fix the damage that had been done in the last 12 hours. But as the police boat pulled away with Chase and his lawyers, the street performer turned his music back on. He hit a chord, a bright, hopeful major key. The crowd turned back to Maya. "Sing," someone shouted. "Sing for real," another yelled. Maya looked at her mother. Elena nodded, tears of relief finally flowing. Maya took the microphone. She didn't have a backing track. She didn't have a light show. She didn't have $1 million marketing team. She began to sing Amazing Grace. It started as a whisper, a soft thread of sound that danced over the crashing waves. But as she moved into the second verse, her voice grew, expanding until it seemed to touch the very stars. She hit the high notes, not for fame, not for money, and not to prove a point. She sang because she finally could. The tourists on the pier stopped. The teenagers put down their phones. For 3 minutes, the only sound in the Los Angeles harbor was the voice of a girl from Compton who refused to be small. But as the final note faded into the night air, Maya saw a black car waiting at the end of the pier. A woman was leaning against it, watching her. It was Evelyn Reed, and she wasn't smiling. The villain was in chains, and the hero was found. But in the music industry, there are no happy endings, only new contracts. Evelyn Reed didn't come to the pier to celebrate. She came to collect. And Maya Vance was about to learn that sometimes the people who save you are the ones you should fear the most. The handcuffs were on Chase, but the chains were still in the room. You see, in the American music industry, when a king falls, the vultures don't mourn, they measure the crown. Evelyn Reed, the woman who had watched Maya's life be threatened from the safety of her penthouse, wasn't at the pier to offer a hug. She was there to offer a brand. And Maya was about to find out that a rescuer in a designer suit can be just as dangerous as a villain in handcuffs. The black car idling at the end of the pier felt like a different kind of predator. Evelyn Reed stepped forward, her heels clicking on the damp wood. Behind her, 2 men in suits, different from Vane's, but no less sharp, held open the rear door. "Get in, Maya, Elena," Evelyn said. It wasn't a request. "The press is 3 minutes away. If they catch you here, you'll be dissected before you can get home. My security will take you to a private location." Maya looked at the crowd, who were now chanting her name. She looked at Sophia, who was being wrapped in a blanket by a paramedic. "What about Sophia?" "She's being taken care of," Evelyn said smoothly. "But you're the story of the century. We need to control it." An hour later, Maya and her mother weren't back in their apartment in Compton. They were on the 40th floor of a glass tower in Century City. The walls were all windows, showing the sprawling lights of Los Angeles, a city that looked beautiful from a height but felt hollow inside. Evelyn sat across from them, a new document sliding across the polished marble table. It wasn't a silence contract. It was a life rights and exclusive recording agreement. "Chase is gone," Evelyn began, her voice like silk. "The board of directors is erasing him. Every album, every image deleted. But the public wants a replacement. They want the girl who sang Truth to Power. They want you, Maya." Elena reached for the contract, her eyes scanning the fine print. 10 albums, a 15-year exclusivity clause. "It's a standard superstar development deal," Evelyn replied, never blinking. "We provide the house in Bel Air. We provide the private tutors for the boys. We pay for your nursing degree. No more night shifts at County General, Elena." Maya becomes the face of the new, authentic movement. Maya looked at the contract. It was $10 million on the front page. It was more money than 1,000 silence contracts. But she looked at the clause under creative control. "The artist's image, repertoire, and public statements shall be subject to final approval by the label." "You want to own what I say," Maya whispered. "I want to protect you," Evelyn corrected. "The world is messy. People are going to ask you about the industry. They're going to ask about the accident Chase had. We need to make sure the narrative stays on the music, not the scandal. We need to keep the industry stable." Stable, Maya stood up, walking to the massive window. Chase lied for 15 years. He used Sophia's voice and threw her away. He tried to have me kidnapped. You knew he was using a backing track, didn't you, Ms. Reed? Evelyn didn't flinch. She took a sip of water. I knew Chase was a profitable asset. My job isn't to be a music teacher, Maya. It's to run a corporation. Now I'm offering you the chance to be the hero. But heroes need scripts. And if I don't sign? Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. Then you're just a girl who was involved in a very messy, very public scandal. Chase's legal team might be in jail, but his insurance companies and partners are still very much alive. Without my protection, the lawsuits Vane drafted don't just disappear. They just change hands. You'll be in court for 10 years. You'll be broken too. And the world, they'll forget your name by next Christmas. The room felt smaller than the ventilation shaft in the warehouse. Maya realized that Chase wasn't the monster. He was just the mask. The system was the monster. I won't do it, Maya said. Maya, honey, Elena started, her voice torn. She looked at the line about her nursing degree, about the house for her sons. Maybe we should think. No, Mama, Maya turned around, her eyes burning. If I sign this, I'm just Chase Hendricks in a different dress. I'm a lie with a better story. I hit that note to be free, not to move into a bigger cage. Evelyn Reed stood up, her composure finally fracturing. You are 11 years old. You don't understand how this works. You think you can go back to Compton and have a career? You think you can just sing on the street? I will make sure every radio station, every streaming service, and every festival in this country knows you are difficult. I will bury your voice so deep no one will find it for 100 years. Then I'll sing louder, Maya said. She grabbed the contract, but she didn't drop it over a pier this time. She took her mother's phone, which had finally been returned by the police, and she opened a new app. What are you doing? Evelyn demanded. I'm going live again, Maya said. Only this time I'm not singing. I'm reading page 12 of your superstar contract. The part where you say I'm not allowed to mention Sophia Mitchell's name in public. Evelyn lunged for the phone, but Alina stepped in the way, her nurse's hands, strong and used to handling unruly patients, gripping Evelyn's wrists. The light's green, Maya, Alina said, her voice filled with a pride that was worth more than $10 million. Tell them everything. For the next 10 minutes, the 40th floor of the tower became the center of a global earthquake. Maya didn't sing a single note. She read the terms of her rescue. She told the world that the label that fired Chase was trying to buy her silence just like he did. The viewer count hit 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. The stock price of Evelyn Reed's company began to flicker on the monitors in the hallway. It dropped 10 points in 6 minutes. Stop it, Evelyn screamed. You're destroying everything. No, Maya said, putting the phone down as the stream ended. I'm just setting the price of the truth, and it turns out you can't afford it. They walked out of the office. The security guards didn't stop them. They were too busy looking at their own phones, watching the world turn against their boss. As they reached the elevator, Sophia Mitchell was waiting there. She had a bruise on her cheek, but she was smiling. The police are downstairs, Sophia said. They want to talk to Evelyn about the morality clauses and some offshore accounts they found on that drive. It turns out Chase wasn't the only one stealing royalties from ghost singers. Maya looked at her mother. Can we go home now? We're going to a hotel, baby, Elena said. A real one with a heater that works. And tomorrow we figure out how to be your own label. But as they stepped onto the street, the sun was beginning to rise over Los Angeles. A crowd had gathered outside the building, not fans, not paparazzi, but other musicians. People holding signs, people with guitars. The voice of America was dead. But the voices of the people were just getting started. The giants had fallen, the tower was shaking, but the most dangerous part of the story was yet to come. Because when you destroy a billion-dollar system, the system doesn't just go away. It tries to reinvent itself. Maya Vance had won the battle, but the industry was preparing for a war that would reach all the way to the Supreme Court. Every story has a climax, but not every climax happens on a stage. For Maya Vance, the final battle wasn't under the neon lights of Hollywood. It was under the cold, fluorescent hum of a congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C. The industry was on trial. The Hendricks Law was on the table, and Chase Hendricks, he was sitting behind a glass partition, watching the girl he tried to erase become the voice of a new nation. This is how the music died. And how something real was born from the ashes. The chamber was silent. On one side of the room sat the titans of the industry, CEOs of streaming giants, label heads in $5,000 suits, and the ghosts of a system that had profited from lies for a century. On the other side sat an 11-year-old girl from Compton, her mother, and Sophia Mitchell. Maya looked different than she had that night at the Orpheum. She wasn't wearing a cheap, $15 discount store blouse anymore. She was wearing a simple, tailored navy suit. She looked like a leader. "Miss Vance," the senator from New York leaned into his microphone. "The industry argues that vocal enhancement is a creative tool, no different from makeup or lighting. They say that by exposing Chase Hendricks, you've put thousands of jobs at risk. What do you say to the claim that the truth is bad for business?" Maya didn't look at the senator. She looked at the cameras. She knew that behind those lenses, millions of kids were watching, kids in church choirs, kids practicing in their bedrooms, kids who were being told they weren't marketable enough. "The truth isn't bad for business," Maya's voice rang out, clear and resonant. "The truth is the business. When you sell a voice that isn't real, you aren't selling music. You're selling a lie. And when you tell a child they have to be a lie to succeed, you aren't just breaking their spirit, you're stealing their future." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn-out object. It was the cracked phone her mother used to record her church solos. "On this phone," Maya continued, "are the voices of people the industry tried to bury. Sophia Mitchell is on here. The engineers Chase fired are on here. And for the last 3 months, thousands of other ghost singers have sent me their stories. They were told to stay in the shadows so a brand could shine. Today, that stops." The hearing lasted for 6 hours. By the end, the Authenticity in Arts Act was passed with a landslide majority. It required every digital enhancement, every ghost singer, and every AI-assisted vocal to be credited as clearly as the lead artist. It was the end of the untouchable icon. As the room cleared, Chase Hendricks was led out by marshals. He stopped for a moment, looking at Maya. He looked older. The tan had faded. The arrogance was replaced by a hollow, haunting realization. His legacy was no longer a collection of Grammys. It was a cautionary tale in every music school in the world. "You really did it," Chase whispered, his voice still raspy from the damage he'd hidden for so long. "You killed the dream." "No, Chase," Maya replied, her voice filled with a strange kind of pity. "I just woke everyone up." Maya went back to Compton. She didn't sign with Evelyn Reed. She didn't buy a mansion in Bel Air. She started her own independent label, C6 Records, run by her mother and Sophia Mitchell. They didn't have a billion-dollar budget, but they had something better. They had the truth. Maya still goes to school. She still argues with her brothers over the remote. She still eats mac and cheese on Tuesday nights. But sometimes, when she walks down the street, she hears a voice coming from a car window or a park bench, a raw, unpolished, beautiful voice. And she smiles, knowing she made the world safe enough for that voice to exist. Chase thought he could destroy her with threats and lawsuits and money. He learned what every bully learns. You can't silence someone who has decided their voice matters. Today, Chase teaches online classes that nobody joins. His awards were revoked, his mansion sold at auction, and his name is a whisper of what not to be. And Maya, she's still just a kid who loves to sing. She sometimes forgets she changed an entire industry. That's real courage. It doesn't need a spotlight or $1 million track. Sometimes it just sounds like a girl saying no when everyone expects her to fold. So here is the question for you. If you were there that night, would you have stood up for Maya when the lawyers came? When the threats started and everyone told you to stay quiet to protect your career, would you have stayed seated, relieved it wasn't you? Drop your honest answer below. We all like to think we'd be the hero, but courage is a lot heavier than we imagine. If you've ever been told to stay small, to know your place, or to accept a lie just to get by, share your story. Maya's voice was just the beginning. Yours matters too. Go back to the 5-minute mark of this video. Watch Chase's lawyer, Marcus Vane, when Maya mentions Sophia Mitchell's name. There is a micro-expression, pure, cold panic, that lasts for exactly 3 seconds. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. If this story reminded you why the truth is worth the fight, share it. If it made you think about your own voice, subscribe. The world doesn't need more people who stay silent to stay safe. It needs more people like Maya. Maybe that person is you.